Hello, this is Tony Hiller from RealClimateScience.com. In my previous video, Are Government Temperature Graphs Credible?, I discussed this global temperature graph from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A lot of the video was a discussion of the year 1921, which NOAA currently shows as being a very cold year. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend you watch it first. The point of the video is to show that the historical record shows that 1921 was actually a very hot year, and this graph is not credible. Some of the evidence was that in 1989, NOAA said most global warming occurred before 1919, and Earth cooled from 1921 to 1979. This Northern Hemisphere temperature graph from the National Academy of Sciences showed that. The temperature reconstruction of Briffa and Jones showed the same thing, warm around 1920, cooling into the 1970s. In 1999, NASA showed that 1921 was the second hottest year on record in the United States after 1934. The New York Herald reported death for millions in 1921's record heat wave. The great heat wave, which has spread over the world during the present summer, has no parallel in history. The New York Times said there was a worldwide heat wave of unusual length and intensity. Save the Children said it was the worst disaster in history. The San Francisco Examiner wrote this article, Science in Our Worldwide Upset Weather. They described worldwide heat and drought. The North Pole was melting, glaciers were vanishing. One of the largest solar storms on record was recorded. Glacier National Park was melting so quickly that experts predicted all of the ice would be gone by 1950. Sea ice in the Arctic between the North Pole and Alaska was described as being young, thin, rotten, moving ice. I showed this page from the Graphic newspaper in London, the cause of our sizzling October. London had 4 days over 80 degrees Fahrenheit during October 1921 as part of an extended heat wave. And here's a comment I got in response to that video. Record cold in England, no mention of it in the fake news like the supposed record high in the summer. Let's take a look at that to see if this comment is accurate. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration only has daily temperature data from one station in England during the year 1921. That station is at Oxford, where I used to live. This graph shows daily maximum temperatures at Oxford every day during the year 1921. During 1921, Oxford did not have a single day which failed to get above the freezing point at some time during the day. Their lowest maximum temperature was 34 degrees Fahrenheit. There's no evidence of record cold, but you can see the heat wave of October 1921 in the graph. Averaging Oxford temperatures over the year, you can see that 1921 was actually one of their hottest years on record. A few years recently have averaged slightly higher temperatures. Even the climate alarmist Guardian knows about the extraordinary year-long drought of 1921. T.S. Eliot wrote his poem The Wasteland, which the Guardian said may have been inspired by the heat and drought of 1921. The fact that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows 1921 as being a very cool year is a very strong indicator that their temperature graphs are not credible. 1921 was a very hot year. And in 1989, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration was aware of that fact. They said Earth cooled from 1921 to 1979. They've altered their temperature data and now show a lot of warming from 1921 to 1979. This comment was not accurate, but was typical of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt which climate alarmists like to spread. They pretend they know what they're talking about, when in fact they're just spreading misinformation. I'm going to finish this video up with a discussion of the Oxford temperature graph. It showed that 1921 was a very warm year, but it also showed that over the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of warm years in Oxford. So you might wonder, what has caused this warmth at Oxford over the last few decades? One thing that's happened at Oxford over the last few decades has been a huge increase in the amount of cars and the amount of traffic. When I lived in Oxford 50 years ago, very few people had cars. Some mornings on our way to the school bus stop, we would run across the ring road in dense fog. We could do this because there were so few cars and because we could hear the cars coming from a distance. But now there is a tremendous amount of cars in traffic in Oxford. You wouldn't have a chance of making it across the ring road alive if you tried doing what me and my brother did in 1970. It's so bad that the county council has implemented what some people have called climate lockdowns, basically banning private cars. These automobiles are burning huge amounts of fuel and the waste heat is escaping into the atmosphere. This undoubtedly is warming up temperatures in Oxford, as is the widespread usage of central heating, which did not exist 50 years ago. If you heat up your home, all of that heat is going to escape out into the atmosphere and warm up ambient temperatures outside. This warming over the past few decades probably is caused by human activity. But it's a localized effect which has occurred over much of England as the population has greatly increased over the past 50 years. There's probably other factors like oceanic circulation patterns which have affected temperatures as well. But the point of this video was to show that 1921 was actually a very hot year. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for the past 15 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki Upal, and the 4 new puppies on the web at realclimatescience.com.